In this video I am going to show you how I knit fingerless mittens like this. These have a double folded edge that can be folded down like this if you like. It has a traditional Norwegian pattern and ribbing here to make it elastic and to give it better shape. I will show you how I knit this from beginning to end, and I will place a link down here in the video description. That link will take you to a blog where I post more information such as yarn alternatives, needle size, measurements, and of course the pattern and written instructions on how to make these. So then I will just get started. I have my yarn and my needles and I'm ready to cast on. The first thing I do is to make a slip knot like this. I place it onto one of my needles and I just pull to make it sit close to the needle but not too tight. Then I take my left hand and I just hold the first stitch like this. My yarn I keep between my middle finger and my thumb, and I use my index finger and I go from below the yarn and up. I twist to make a loop around my index finger, and then I use my needle. I place it on top of my yarn and move it down to the tip of my index finger. I move it up through the loop and I just slip it onto the needle, and I slightly pull to maneuver the second stitch close to the first one. So again, from down and up, twist to make a loop, needle on top, moving down to the tip of my index finger, up through the loop and slip it onto the needle. And then I will just keep going until I have the right amount of stitches on my needle. And then I find needle number 2. I place it behind like this, close to the last stitch, and I just keep going. I make sure that the first stitch here on needle number 2 goes close to the last one here on needle number 1. And I just keep going like this until I have done all 4 needles, and then I have number 5 to use when I knit. And the good thing about casting on this way is that the edge of your knitting will be really elastic, and I think it looks good. One disadvantage is that when you knit the first row, all the stitches can be moved. You can see here I can make gaps, so it's not a very stable cast on when you begin to knit, but I think the result is worth it, and you'll only have to take some time to do the first row, and after that it will be as usual. So I'll continue until I am done casting on, and I'll get back to you with the next step. Now my cast on is finished, and I have organized my needles so that this one is the first I cast on. Here's my yarn end, and this one is the last. I have placed my yarn over 2 fingers like this. There are several ways to hold the yarn. This is just the way I like it. So now I will begin to knit, and I will do knit stitches only. And I begin by sticking my 5th knitting needle through the stitch from left to right, or if I hold it like this, it'll be from the left side of the stitch. I go to the tip of my index finger underneath the yarn to pick it up and bring it through the stitch. I pull my yarn slightly so that I move this stitch close to the last one here, and then I slip it off the needle. And then I go to the next one, go from left to the tip of my index finger behind the yarn to pick it up through the stitch and off the needle. And I keep going like this, and you can see that it is easy to make a gap here between the 2 needles, and this is what I explained before, that you can move the stitches, they are not locked, so if you pull your needles when you knit, you will get a bigger gap than you need to. So it's not a big deal, you just try when you slip the stitch off the needle to not to pull. Just keep it, knit the stitch, and when you slip it off you keep as little tension as possible on this bit between here. This goes only for the first row. After doing the first row, it's business as usual. And these holes you can see here, they will disappear as well, but they will come in handy when we are finishing the cuff. I will show you that in a later step. And now this is my first needle, and when I move to the second, I try to, first I knit the stitch, then I pull my yarn to bring the stitch close to the last one on the first needle, and then I slip it off the needle. And I will just keep going like this, around and around and around, doing knit stitches only, until I am ready to do the next step. And I will get back to you on how to do that. Now I have finished my first rows in stockinette, or knit stitches only, and I will begin to make my folding edge. And what I will do is to knit 2 stitches together, and that is just like knitting 1 stitch as you have done all the time, but you pick up 2 stitches instead of 1. So I go through 2 stitches, then I pick up the yarn, and now I have knitted 2 stitches together. Then I I cannot remember what is this called in English. We call it to throw the yarn when we say it in Norwegian, and it looks like this. You just go to the tip of the index finger underneath the yarn like this. That's it. It's like yarn over, yarn forward, something like that. Anyway, this is what it should look like, and this will stay on the needle, and then again knit two. Oh, I've done this a little bit tight. Knit 2 stitches together, roll the yarn around the needle, knit 2 stitches together again, and I just repeat throughout the row like this. And when I'm finished, it looks like this. And in the next row I will knit stockinette again. I will knit these stitches and I will knit these ones. All these will be new stitches, and I will knit all of them the same way, like this. And I will knit the same number of rows on this side as I have done here, so that on each side of this folding edge I will get 2 pieces that has the same size. And when that is done, I will get back to you with the next step. So now I have finished the folding edge and the piece that comes after. So now my work looks the same on both sides of the folding edge. And if I try to fold it, this is what the edge will look like, and this piece goes right up to the needle, so they are equal on both sides. So now you have 2 choices. You can leave it this way, and when you are finished with the whole thing, you can fold it and use a sewing needle to stitch it to the wrong side around here. Personally, I think hand stitching like that to stitch fasten loose yarn ends and linings like this, I think that is really boring. So I will do almost anything to get away from that particular part. So I will show you how I do that. And first I turn my work to the wrong side, and I find the beginning of my row. So if I want to continue to knit now, I would do this and knit like this. The only reason why I have turned it to the wrong side is that I will have to fold it like this with a needle here, and it will be difficult to get the needle through the hole while attached to this edge. Confused? That's okay, I will show you now. So this is the beginning of my row, and as I explained, I will go this way. So I will find the beginning of the row down here, and I will move the same way, the same direction. And I will just pick up the same number of stitches that I have on my first needle here. And I will pick up the part that goes over the stitch like a belt here. hold it like this so it's easier to see. Okay. And I'll keep this yarn end here on this side. That way I will close it in and I don't have to stitch that one either, which I think is great. And I place my two needles parallel to each other like this. I find my yarn and I have an extra needle here, and I just begin to knit the two pieces together. So I will use knit stitch as I have done here. Same thing, you have brought your needle through the stitch, pick up the yarn like this. Only difference is that now you pick up the first stitch on the parallel needle as well. So the first one is the slip knot, so that is going to be a bit tight. Pick up the yarn, go through the first and the second stitch, then slip both stitches off the needle. It's like knitting two stitches together, only one from each needle. Again, first pick up this one, then pick up the parallel, get the yarn, bring it through both stitches on the way back and slip them off the needles. So I will continue to do this throughout the row. When I am finished with this needle, I will go to the edge where I did my cast on, and I will I will pick up more stitches and I will knit them together the same way. And now I just have a few stitches left and I can show you what the result will look like. The good thing about this is that it will be elastic, so there's no risk of stitching too tight. There you go. So this is the wrong side, this is the right side. So next needle I go and pick up stitches here again, and I just continue until I have finished my row. And then I'll get back to you with the next step. So now I have finished connecting the edges and I have knitted one more row after that. I have also, because I have hidden the yarn here from when I did my cast on, I have replaced that with some yarn to just indicate where my row begins. So next step is to add the pattern color. Just pull it through like this, just wind it a couple rounds around my thumb here to secure it when I begin. when I knit with two colors, I like to keep my bottom color here over my index finger and closest to me, and my pattern color over both my index and middle finger and away from me. I try to be consistent about how I place the yarns because it is difficult to knit with the exact same tension on both yarns, and if you hold one looser than the other, you will have stitches in one color turning out bigger than the other, and this will usually you won't notice this, but if the yarns change places, they will also change tension, and if your tension is uneven, then you will have an uneven result, because, for example, my pattern stitches will be small in a few rows and big in a few rows. So that is why I try to keep them in the same place. If you knit with equal tension on both yarns, you will not see the difference, even if you change. But personally, I don't take any chances, because I don't like to unravel either. So when I knit with two colors, I just knit the usual way, and I pick up the right color for my pattern. So I just choose bottom color or pattern color depending on what my chart says. And it's easy to make it too tight here, so I can test it by pull and maybe adjust if I haven't done this too much. And just see that you get some elasticity to it. So now I'll just keep going and knit my pattern, and I will get back to you when it is time to do some increases. Now I have finished the first part of my pattern, and in this row I will begin to make a couple increases. I begin by just knitting, and I choose a place. I pull my needle slightly apart, and you can see there's some yarn that crosses there, and I pick it up with my right needle and place it like this onto my left needle, and I will twist knit this stitch. If I don't twist it but just knit it like this, you can see it opens up, and I will get a hole here. So instead of going through like this and open the stitch up, I go from the opposite direction through here like this, and then you can see here that the yarn crosses and twists the stitch like this. So now you can see no hole. So this is how I make one new stitch. So I will continue and finish this row, and I will get back to you when it is time to make increases for the thumb, and I'll explain a couple things about how I do that. So now I have begun to knit the main pattern, and I have stopped here where I am going to place the thumb, and Now I will show you how I make increases for the thumb. So first I knit the first side band and I make one stitch the same way I did before. So that's my first increase, and I want to know where to find the thumb, especially now in the beginning, and I don't want to spend a lot of time to look in the pattern to find it, or to forget where it is and knit wrong. Believe me, that can happen. So I have found some more yarn, place it here after my increase, I knit next stitch, and there I have placed my marker, and now I will increase again, and finally I will knit the last side band and finish my row. So here I have a side band, make one, knit one, make one, and side band again. So this is the beginning for my thumb increases, and now I will knit a couple more rows before I make the next increase, and I'll continue like that. Follow the chart. I will always place my increases right inside the side bands, right after the first side band and right before the last one. So now I will continue, and I will get back to you when I have finished my increases and I am ready to make the hole for the thumb. So now I have finished all my increases and I'm ready to make the thumb hole. So I have knitted until I have arrived here at the first side band for the thumb, and I find a stitch holder or just a regular safety pin or a piece of yarn to knit the stitches onto, or whatever suitable object you can find to hold the stitches. And then I begin at the first side band and I place all the thumb stitches onto the stitch holder, including the last side band, like this. And to replace these stitches I will cast on new stitches here. I will continue in the same pattern. So I will begin with this color. Oh, there you go. So now I'll just, and I cast on the same way as I did in the beginning. And I just continue until I have the right amount of stitches. And when I am finished, I will knit the last stitch here as well onto this needle. This does not look good now, but now I will continue to knit my pattern, and when I do so, there will be more tension on this, especially when I pick up here, so I can make this tighter then. So I'll continue round and around until I have finished my pattern, and then I will get back to you with the next step. So now I have finished my pattern and I am ready to finish off here by knitting some ribbing. I have begun here, and my ribbing here is knit 1, purl 1. So I knit 1 the way I have done all the time. When I purl, I begin here at the tip of my index finger, I go behind the yarn, and then I move through the stitch this way, because now I want to open the stitch up. I do not want to go around here and up and twist it. I do not want that when I do my knitting. So this is how I purl. So I knit and again purl, begin at the tip of my index finger, go underneath the yarn, pick up the stitch, go back underneath the yarn, and then I use my right needle to just pull the yarn through the stitch. And so I continue. Oops. Throughout this row and for as many rows as I like to get my ribbing as long as I want it. And now here you can see the reason why I put my needle through the purl stitch the way I did. You can see here the knit stitches, they angle from right and towards the left on the needle. So this will be the direction to go through to pick it up. And now the purl stitches, they go the opposite way. So now the right way to pick them up without twisting them would be on the back here, from left and there, and towards the right to open up the stitch. So what I just showed you when I did my purl stitches only goes for the first row where you convert the stitch from a knit stitch to a purl stitch. Now when you purl a purl stitch, then you go the other way. But this is just a matter of it's just a matter of practice. You have to try sometimes and just practice to see how you have to do it to make the stitch open up instead of twisting. So I will now continue to make my ribbing until I have the length that I want, and then I will get back to you on how I cast off. Now I have finished my ribbing and I'm ready to cast off, and I will cast off by knitting 2 stitches first. I just go with the type of stitch that I already have. When I have 2 stitches here on my needle, I pick up the first stitch and I just slip it over the second one and off the needle like this. Then I knit another stitch, take the one on the right and slip it over the left stitch and off the needle. And I just continue. I just continue on all stitches until I have only one left. When I'm finished, I will be left with 1 stitch like this. When I do, I will cut the yarn and I will just pull the yarn end through like this. And then I can attach the yarn end. And when I am finished casting off here, I will get back to you on how I make the thumb. Now my ribbing is finished and I will show you how I make the thumb. I have replaced this stitch holder with a knitting needle again, so it's basically just pick them from this one and onto the needle. And then I have to turn around and I will pick up some stitches from this side. And I will use at least 3 needles when I do this, because when I knit in the round, using 2 needles will make the work difficult and it will make a poor result. I think it will not look good. So there you go. Then I find my yarn and I place it through the thumb hole and out through the cuff, and I wind it around my thumb just a couple rounds, and then I begin to knit ribbing here as well. Knit, purl, knit, purl, the exact same way as I did before. And I will go around and around. In the first row I will make sure when I switch needles that I make the transition as tight as possible, and then I knit until my thumb has required length, and I will cast off the same way as I did here. So that's it really. I hope this was helpful, so thank you for watching.